You're listening to Visitors, a podcast about ideas. Conversations with interesting people, documentary shorts, journeys into the unknown, and much more. A couple of years ago, I lived in China as a teacher. During my time there, I was struck by how every other foreign teacher I met seemed to be lost somehow. Many of them had left home to escape something they wanted to leave behind them, and many others had brought something secret with them that they wanted to hide. But all of them were looking for something they couldn't quite define. This first episode of Visitors shares 4 stories of very different people who decided to leave their lives behind in the Western world to start new lives in China. Rather than explorations of cultural shock or adaptation to change, these are emotional portraits telling stories of loss, discovery, tragedy, hope, and redemption. Or at least I hope so. I'll be back at the end of the podcast, but for now, we start in the desert. Enjoy.
I was born in California in the deserts, August 3rd, 1982, and my biological mother, she had some problems. She was schizophrenic, and my biological father was just he would go off and work somewhere, and so he'd be gone for long periods of time. And so she had a breakdown when I was with her, and she thought that all the food baby food was all poisoned, and so she thought the only way she could feed me was by with tap water, and so I almost starved to death. And Child Protective Services found me and had me sent to a foster care. And actually, the foster care that I went into, my foster parents ended up adopting me later, and so that they're the ones that raised me, and that was all in Apple Valley, California. People came in and out of my life frequently because they ran a group home, and then they ran a home for unwed mothers, and so I saw people come and go constantly. That's always been a part of my life, and so I think going to a new place, meeting new people, and then eventually having to say goodbye to them is just something I've done all my life, which was really hard growing up, actually. In fact, there was one woman came to stay with us. She was helping my mom out, and I adopted her as my sister because I wanted someone who was going to stay and someone who wasn't going to leave. And so but right now, I've lived in 3 countries outside of the U.S. And so it's just seeing people, having people come and go and getting to know people and then having to leave. That's just life for me now. If you can say lived, I was in Mexico for 4 months, and I lived in Korea overall for about 2.5 years, and in Japan overall for about 2.5 years. Facebook was a very, very, very important part of my life in the US, but also in Korea and in Japan. And here, because of the VPN, and because the VPN doesn't work properly all the time on my computer, Facebook, I kind of don't use it that much, and it's just too much of a hassle. And I think it's different when I'm in a place where there's lots of foreigners, because our school has a lot of foreign teachers. Because it was the same, like in Korea, when I was at the first school, there was only one other foreign teacher, and she was only there for 4 months, and after that, I was the only one there. And so I had Korean friends, and I could hang out with Koreans, and I also had some foreign friends that were in Seoul and things like that. But I got the Korean experience, and I don't think I've gotten the full Chinese experience because I've been mostly hanging out with the foreigners here. And so I started to make one Chinese friend here, and it kind of fizzled out. And so I think if I'd gotten the full Chinese experience, my behavior would be very different. But as it is right now, it's just little things like that, like no Facebook or very little Facebook, and also kind of understanding that there's always a chance I'm going to be run over, even on a sidewalk. That's fun. They see you and they don't slow down. They speed up. And they don't swerve away from you, they swerve towards you. I think another thing, because of cultural restrictions, I haven't been to church the whole time I've been here. It is an important thing for me, and I hate to say this, but I don't trust the churches in China because they're government approved, which means that they're censored. And so that's why, that's definitely a big part of my life that has changed pretty drastically. Without that connection, it kind of it alters the way that I think, and a little bit. And I think that's, as far as adjusting, I've just treated Sunday like an extra Saturday, I guess. Slept more, or when I had the chance to, obviously, not when we have work, but just done something like done more laundry, or done something that I needed to do, and that's just I guess become a little more secular, I suppose, which I'm not too happy with, but that's just my life now. It just means that, like you said, if I read the Bible, I'm trying to, because back home, I'd go to church on Sunday, but I might go weeks without reading the Bible. Whereas here, I try to get at least 15 minutes every single day, and so that I've kind of got that connection all the time, since I can't get it from the church. And so it's something I have to, it's a task I have to take care of myself, instead of leaving it up to a place or other people, or that I might be more inclined to do back home. Jesus' last kind of private sermon to his disciples, which is John 14 through 17, that whole section is very important to me. That's kind of the foundation of what I want, I guess, my faith. Which it's only in John. The rest of the Gospels don't have that whole thing. It goes straight from the Last Supper to the garden, whereas here they eat the Last Supper, and then he talks to them for a long time, and then they go to the garden. And in John, like in that section, the most famous part of it is I'm the vine and you are the branches. Basically, like I'm the one where the life comes from. The life comes from me, and if you're not with me, then you don't have life, basically. And that's kind of that's the part that forms kind of the foundation of my faith, and so I go back to that a lot.
I asked David what word or phrase he would use to describe his time in China.
Adventure. I think that's the biggest thing, is that people want adventure, and a lot of people also want to escape. I think a lot of people here are escaping situations at home where they're given responsibility that they can't really handle with their families and things like that, and coming here puts some distance, and so they do have to deal with it a little bit, but it's not the same. They can be away from it. They can have breathing room, whereas back home they might be smothered by their families, and I won't say that that's why I left. Like, I wasn't necessarily smothered by my family, but I can understand wanting to get away from a situation, get somewhere new, And I think that's what a lot of people here do. America is my home behind a fence. That's where I was, born, is where I was raised, but I don't really fit there right now, because I can't, it would take so much for me to actually to move somewhere right now, especially after my mom died. Going back is just gonna be short visits, because this kind of teaching where I'm given a place to stay and all that is the only way that I can really live right now. Whereas China, it's home with the lights off, because it is a place for me to stay. It's a place where I can fit in a little bit, do something, the teaching, but there's also a lot of things I can't do, a lot of things I'm blocked out from. So, yeah, that's it. I think it's hard with the U.S. again, because of how much time I've spent abroad. that it's not the same going back. Hence the fence. I mean, that's part of the fence. It's not the entirety of the fence. But so my feeling toward home right now, it's snapshot, because it's something that I remember. It's something I can look at, but it's not the same as it was at that time, And as far as China, I haven't seen enough of China yet, So I guess China's question mark more, because there's so much that I don't know about it yet. I mentioned my biological father that would go off and work other places. I mean, it was always within the U.S., but he could never stay in one place. My biological mother's kind of the opposite. She's actually afraid of moving, and so they're kind of a bad mix there. But so I kind of have a little bit of both of those things, where I can't stay in one place for too long because I feel trapped. I think even when I was in Japan, I think my job in Japan and my situation in Japan was my favorite out of the three so far. Even so, I was faced with the idea that I'd have to stay in the same place another year, and possibly have to work 3 or 4 jobs to keep myself sustained and everything, and like that I would just be doing this again, and I felt really trapped, like I needed to get out of this and do something else. And that's always going to be the case. So like I might stay here for a second year in China, but after that, after that time's over with, I'm going to start to feel trapped again. I know it. Even if I go explore, if I go to the Great Wall and I go to all these places, I go to Inner Mongolia and I go to, if I travel all around, I'm still going to end up feeling trapped. And so I think for me, travel is the only way to kind of escape that, moving to a new place. And there's other people like that, a lot of other people like that. But not everyone. Some people come here and they realize come here or Japan or China, or Korea or wherever else, or let's say Chile or something like that, and they realize just how much they need home. And so there's people like me, and then there's the opposite of that, where travel just shows them exactly how much they need their home.
I would say that home, I always feel, no matter how hard I'm working, is drifting. I'm drifting. It's pleasant. I'm never made to feel too much. If I think too much, it's because I choose to. Nothing's unexpected. Well, I mean, sometimes it is, but then it's very painful or very thrilling, or, and it jolts you out of the drift. Here, every day, you have to be alert, you have to be awake, you have to be on top form, and I think that's why I'd be so tired all the time. I think Westerners, people talk about how laid back the East is. It's not. It's the West that's laid back. We have so much more security. One thing that's really tugged at me and was unexpected was there was a day when it had been really, really hot, and it was sports day, around that time. And then suddenly in the middle of this week of horrible blazing heat, where it shouldn't have been that warm, everybody was saying, oh, isn't it great? And I was thinking, not really. And there was a day when it was sort of misty and slightly rainy, and everything was still green. And I thought, I want to go home. It was really decided for me. I was looking for another job, and Teach TEFL in China phoned me and said, how do you feel about doing an interview to go out to teach in China? And I thought, oh, why not? I think, yes, there is a degree of everybody who comes out, especially their first year, they've had some kind of emotional damage. But I think they're mostly over it by the time they decide, yeah, China. At home, I'm considered to be very, very loud, very outgoing, very outspoken. In China, most of the time people don't notice I'm around. And the general population don't notice. And I found that very disconcerting. It's like if you want to be heard, you have to use your voice all the time. And I found that by the end of a teaching day, if I've had all the classes, and especially if it finishes with 2 consecutive classes, I've got no voice left. And it's not just because they're loud, it's because to make yourself heard. They think if you're just talking quietly and calmly, you can't have anything to say. Maybe, but going so far away from everybody you know will be judging you and measuring you on previous behaviour, you've only got yourself to measure up to and maybe the standards of those around you, but you don't know them. So you do your work and you learn to be comfortable with what you have. So rather than saying, oh, well, my brothers wouldn't approve and my best friend wouldn't approve, you're saying, well, do I approve? And if the answer is yes, then what does it matter? If I had to go back to the UK, I'd find another way of teaching somewhere that isn't the UK. I think I'm at a point in my life where my family are all settled and they don't need me. But at the moment, I need me and I need to not be around them having had success and watching me still struggle. I need to be somewhere where I can struggle and no one's going to judge me. I think I'm coming to terms with a lot of things and also struggling towards something. I realised a few weeks ago that I haven't really changed much from the girl of 20 who, after her first degree, sat in the kitchen and cried because she just, finished the composition paper and said to her best friend, admittedly there had been wine consumed, but do you think I'm a genius? No, she said. And I said, then what's the point of being a composer? And I realised, yes, I've put that behind me, and yes, I accept that I'm not a genius, that's not the issue. But there's still that little voice that says, well, what's the point then? When I got divorced and I, went back to live with my parents, which, was simply because he'd left me with so much debt that there was no other choice. But in that time, I wrote 2 books, got them published, did my doctorate, composed stuff for other friends' weddings. I looked so productive. I wasn't. I was totally stagnant. I wasn't moving anywhere. I was just sitting in that computer room producing academic work, literature, well, I wouldn't call it literature, but literature as opposed to academia. And where was my life? Whereas now it's like, well, I'm going to write tonight. Oh, hang on, I've promised to do this and I've got a course so-and-so and I need to... and I'm living. I think that's probably what's going to be... When I stop running around and I get everything sorted out into compartments, then I'll be able to sit down and write. Right now, why not enjoy the fact that I'm trying new food and, getting some sleep now and again. I found something very interesting. I've become a lot more physically affectionate. I don't come from a very demonstrative family. And I found that because I was very comfortable with them, I would do things like, one of my brothers, he was going through his divorce at the time. And when I passed by his chair, I was going to get everybody coffee, and I just kissed him on the forehead. And he was delighted, but startled, because I never do things like that. I think it's because my brothers never had any problems with each other doing that, but there's such a huge age difference that when I stopped being a child, of course they were very, very aware that suddenly, their little sister was becoming a woman and everything suddenly seemed inappropriate, and by the time they'd got over themselves, I'd sort of drifted away. And then just thought, oh, well, they don't want to have the same relationship. Okay, I'll just get on with it. I'm a teenager, I've got my own life. But out in China, I do have my own life. They're not wrapped up in it. But when I was in China, I'll look back at it as an absolutely marvellous brief period where, due to being very ill, I was a size 10. I loved that. I love being able to see the ribs on my back. That was fantastic. And the disappointment when it all got put straight back on as soon as I was well. I'll remember watching beautiful sunsets and being told, oh, well, that's just the pollution, and thinking, shut up. It's beautiful. Go away. I'll remember the absolute surprise of opening an incredibly expensive box of wine inlaid with silk, absolutely gorgeous, and computer printed misspelled label on the wine on the inside. I'll remember how the students can drive you insane one day and then the next day you can't stop laughing. It's just, how can you be like that? I'll remember the freedom children have. That they're supposed to have no freedom here, but they have such freedom.
So the way I ended up in China at all was just draw of the luck, like struck of the luck kind of thing. Like, I just needed to get the fuck out of wherever I was at that moment. And I was like, you know what? Apply. Oh, this sounds good. Gone. And then I was there. So the main reason why I was like, it's time to really get the fuck out was because I felt myself becoming very mean towards Chinese people because they were very mean towards me. And when I say they were very mean towards me, like, I would go someplace and they would look at me and start calling me names again because of my skin color. Yeah, if I didn't leave, I was not gonna become a good person. I was not. So I had to go. I traveled to a lot of different places. Asia was not on my immediate list, but it was eventually going to be on my list. But when that opportunity came, I said, why not? Let me just jump into it, get into it, and was out within 2 months. So I finished being an au pair in maybe January, and then was in China in March. So just left. I think because it was so quick, you didn't have time. Well, I personally didn't have time to really process what the feeling was. I just knew that this had to be done, A, B, C, D, for me to get there. And I know I want to get there, so I'm just going to do it and get there. I didn't really feel and understand the change I was doing until I landed and I had my apartment and I was sitting in my apartment. That's when I was like, oh shit, I'm living in Asia. But at that point, you're already there. So the particular location wasn't even really thought of. It was just not being in my current location. Right? And this China happened to be it. I did not expect the variety of culture, and though it's mostly, Chinese Mandarin speaking people, you could go to Zhejiang Newtown and literally eat. You can eat Spanish food, you can eat Greek food, like, you can meet Spanish people, you can meet Greek people, and I was so mind blown at that how it did not, though I didn't set expectations of what to expect, it still somehow was mind blowing. I knew that once I left my apartment, I was not at home. But in my apartment, I could make it home. So what makes me feel home? What foods? What pictures? What products do I need? And where can I get that? So during that phase of finding that and establishing it in my apartment, made it so much easier to just feel comfortable. Because then every day was like, okay, I'm just traveling, even though I'm walking outside. I'm just traveling. But I'm going to come back, and in my house, I'm going to feel home. So that was like a very big thing for me to do, is just make sure my apartment felt like home. Once I had that foundation set, everything else was easy. Home usually is, well, this is not the only definition of home, but when you see like people who look like you, people who act like you, people who believe in the same kind of things like you, it makes you feel safe. Safe is the word. Especially being a solo female traveler, it's safety, right? So you're not lonely. Loneliness can kill you. It really can. Like, to sit with yourself all this time, all by yourself. You're all the way on the other side of the world, away from the people you know would die for you, having to find how to fend. Like, it's just not, humans aren't lonely beings. We need community. So even if I have to pretend to be in your community, I'm gonna do that to find my community. That instance with racism actually was not at the very end. So I always call this the Beyonce effect whenever anybody asks me about it. Because China is a communistic country, they are very sheltered. The general population is very sheltered on the diversity of the world. So if you do not look or act like what they have been told you should look or act like, the way they stare, oh my lord, that staring, oh my god. So when I first got there, my naive self was like, oh my gosh, yes, keep staring. Thanks, I know I'm beautiful, I know I'm brown, yes. That was like maybe a month or two living in China, where I was just in awe about how everyone was just in awe of me, just being me. And then, month 3 came, and you're just like, okay, I just want to walk outside with sweatpants, my hair looking crazy, and maybe some eye boogers, and be good. Like, leave me alone. That was never happening because they were still staring. And then it turns from the staring to the people who stare and actually don't like you acting out on them not liking you. So instead of it being, oh wow, you're so beautiful, because you start picking up the phrases, it turns into, oh wow, black person, oh wow, look at their face, oh wow, touch your, oh my god. The worst was when the kids would reach out and try to rub my skin off. I would literally have kids just rub, and then look at their mom like, Mom. I was like, what are you doing? Those moments were when I was like, you know what, I don't think I could do this. I need to leave. Like, there's but so much of this you can take before you mentally start questioning, is there something wrong with my skin? Especially if you don't see other people who look like you often. Luckily, I am confident enough to be comfortable with my skin. If I wasn't, I would mentally be draining. Because also the perception and what they show of black people in the country, I saw some of my friends who weren't with like the solidified companies were specifically getting messages from recruiters saying, oh, we can't hire you because you're too black. And I was like, oh my gosh. Honestly, that was the biggest thing. Eventually, all of the people who see you aren't giving you positive, well, being of dark skin, aren't giving you positive effect, like a positive reaction. So eventually it's not just the Beyonce effect. So then you get into the phase of sadness, like why this? And then you have to for me, I had to reroute my thought process, because I know I'm beautiful, I know I'm comfortable in my skin. So I'm not questioning why, but now I'm angry at you for doing this to me, for targeting me, for pinpointing me. So then it turned into anger. So it went from happiness to sadness to anger to then stability, where I understand not everyone is like this, and not everyone is looking at me in a negative light. Some people are looking at me in a positive light, and there are some days that I go out where I'm okay with you wanting to take a picture with me, but then there are other days that I go out when I'm not okay with that. So finding that balance is the end of the Beyonce effect, where if you're Beyonce, you probably don't get peace. But every once in a while, you're okay with like taking pictures with your fans. But other days, you're just like, I'm gonna just cover everything up so you don't see me, so I can just be human. I think it changed me. There is no way, because basically I was there for almost 2 years. There's no way to literally every single day to go through something like that and have to decipher whether or not it's positive or negative, how to decipher how to react to that, whether or not to react to that. There's no way to have that experience every day and it not change you, to either make you become more resilient or either make you become sadder or more angry towards people. For me in particular, I believe that it made me more resilient. It made me more solidified in who I am and what I stand for and how I appear to people. But it also made me more angry towards certain types of people. And I was aware of that, which is why I had to leave, because I did not want to become more angry towards certain type of people, because anger just leads to a negative reaction to them, regardless of whether or not you know their intention. I definitely do agree that anger leads to change, but I believe one person's anger rarely does. If it's a collective anger used as a plan to create a change, then 100%. But it wasn't a collective anger, because the black population in Guangzhou weren't fighting for that kind of unity. A lot of the black population was there to make money. If you are collectively angry to the point where you want to make this kind of change against the racism towards you, that might have an effect on the amount of money you make. So would you rather, well, for a lot of their mentality, would you rather just deal with this for now, make your money and leave, and then come back, deal with this for now, make your money and leave? Or would you rather fight for this change and risk making the money that you need to make? It's upside down, okay? China is upside down from any Western part of the world. Being able to throw yourself in an upside down part of the world and thrive. And when I say thrive, you don't have to become a billionaire, but just be happy, just be good, just allow yourself to experience what life could be like with great technology, okay? Delivery at 3 a.m. at the corner store down in your basement that you don't have to go to, but you can, order and have to bring it up. Just also being able to live a life and make enough money where you can do what you want. The pay ratio to the cost of living makes sense. I mean, as a foreigner, made sense. I would certainly go back to visit, because I still have friends there that I still check in on. But to live, that's a solid, strict hell no.
I asked Lucy what word or phrase she would use to describe her time in China.
Authenticity. So that feeling falls under the sense of joy. So when I think back on my experience in China, it's not, though I had negative experiences, overall, I'm an overall positive person. So I think joy when I think of China. Why? Because if I didn't go, then I wouldn't have had so many joyful experiences. But I also could have gone, felt joy. It felt fake, but it didn't feel fake. I feel like I created and continue to develop my authentic self through that authentic experience. So I feel like the feeling that truly sums up that is authenticity. Man, I'm good.
So basically, while I was at uni in Warwick, Ed was at uni in Liverpool, and he met my friends from home.
Just on a night out, like we just met them in the smoking area, sort of thing. I think one of them was being sick, and we helped him out, and then invited them back to ours for a party.
So a couple of years later, so that group of friends met up in Dublin for two people's birthdays, and that's when me and Ed went. Mm-hmm. But Ed was originally not going to go, and he sent me a text saying that I could have his room or something.
I didn't know Rosie, but I'm in an iron about going because it was just after New Year's Eve and I didn't have much money. But one of our friends in the group said, well, if you're not going to go, you can give your hostel booking to this girl Rosie because she hasn't sorted anything yet. So I arranged it with her by text, and then the night before everyone went on the trip, some friends stayed at mine because I lived in Liverpool and they were flying from Liverpool. they stayed at mine the night before, and I got FOMO, and I was like, actually, I do want to go. And I just text Rosie, like, sorry, you can't have that hostel space, actually, because I'm coming. But you managed to get there anyway.
Yeah. So we'd actually text before we even met.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird.
After Dublin, we kind of kept in touch a little bit, because we got on really well on that trip. And then... But I was planning on going to Spain, because I was leaving the job that I was in, which I hated, like an office job, to go teach English as a foreign language in Spain. And this was like 2 months after I met Rosie.
And I was planning on teaching English too. So on the day that I had my interview to do my TEFL course, which happened to be Valentine's Day, I was in Liverpool for the interview. Ed lived in Liverpool, so I texted him saying, asking if he wanted to go for a drink. So we met up for a drink, but then he was planning on going to Spain.
My friends, I'd said like, go meeting you for a drink or whatever, and my friends were like, oh, on Valentine's Day. I was like, no, like she just happens to be in Liverpool anyway.
Yeah. I think the fact that when I asked Ed out on Valentine's Day, he didn't clock that I was interested in him, like, demonstrates how little Ed especially was looking for someone, because
I was about to go, wasn't I?
He was about to go to Spain, and that was your first time living abroad, wasn't it? So I think you just felt like a huge change to you.
I think we were having a ciggy, and some like local smackheads were like, "You's out together? You on a date?" And I was like, "No, are we? I don't know."
I was like, "Yes."
Yeah. So even the crackheads could see it.
I think you can only find a good relationship when you're not looking, can't you?
Yeah. So I went to Spain for 3 months, but before I went, we had arranged to meet at a festival in Barcelona that Rosie had told me about. I had a brilliant time.
And then we just texted for a couple of months, met up in Malvern in the UK, but then for that whole time I was planning to go to China. So we basically we fell for each other, but I was planning on moving to China. So we were thinking that there was going to be like an expiry date on it.
So that summer, it was sort of back and forth. Like I was staying at my parents in Southampton. Rosie was in Northwich. Back and forth. Like I'd go to Cheshire. She came down. We met up in Malvern in the middle a couple of times or something. And so the whole time we were seeing each other, sort of knowing that it either had an expiry date or I was going to have to go with her. Or we talked about even Rosie not going and us going together somewhere else, because we both did TEFL, which is why it worked out that we could go together in the end. But the fact that we both did TEFL, I just didn't want to go to China through fear of, because I'm allergic to peanuts and all the food there's peanuts and asthma and it's polluted and everything. It just didn't seem like a safe place for me to go. And that's what my mum would like. Whenever I talked about doing TEFL, she was just like insistent that I shouldn't go to Asia, and I listened to her. But then when it came down to it, I didn't want to lose Rosie, so we went. Like I say, I really didn't want to go, and I wanted to go. So I wanted to go back to Europe, maybe. Like I'd got a really good feel of Spain. I was thinking about maybe going back there permanently. Like I wanted to travel, just China didn't interest me.
I remember we were talking on the phone like late at night, and you were down south with your parents and I was in Cheshire with my parents, and I just remember you like suggesting that you must have seen a job in China, and I remember saying, well, if you want to work in China, why don't you apply for the same company that I'm working for?
That sounds familiar.
I'd heard that China was the best place to like start your career, like it had the best kind of support from your teachers. So I think both of us we wanted to start a career, didn't we? And we were both trying to get away from the kind of the just party lifestyle, I think.
I got the job I got after uni not because I wanted to work in the solicitor's office. I just wanted to stay in Liverpool because I had a good circuit of friends. I had a really active social life, there was a lot of like partying and that, but after 2 years of it I was getting a bit fried out and starting to feel a bit aimless and starting to look at waking up on Sunday mornings after being up all weekend and thinking this isn't really I need to start making something happen. And if I felt like if I was still in Liverpool, then I wouldn't ever. I needed a drastic change to blow away the cobwebs and start a life doing something else. And that's TEFL seemed like the best way to do that, because I didn't want to just save up money and then drop like a few grand on 6 weeks around Thailand. I wanted to earn, like, to sustain myself. We were just both separately taking loads of drugs at one point and felt like, yeah, there's more than this. It got boring. Like I say, I only had that job to stay in Liverpool and take drugs at weekends and see my friends and that, and yeah, you want more after a while. So we had about a month at this point when we started thinking about me going to China, and she emailed, got me in, I agreed, and but we didn't know how soon I could get there, sort of thing. So she emailed the recruiter, who I got in touch, and they said, if you really want to go, we can get you there in January. So that would mean just 2 months of Rosie being in China before me. And yeah, we went for it.
My boss had like 3 conversations with me where she was like, do you want Ed to work at your school? And I was like, no, definitely not. And she was like, okay, and I think you need to think about your reasons for that. And I was like, all right, okay. And then she'd like have a talk with me again in 2 weeks and be like, have you made your decision yet? And I'd be like, yeah, I don't want him to work at my school.
We were a new couple.
Yeah, we'd only been together for like 6 weeks when I moved to China, it's a huge step, isn't it, to live together, to live abroad together, to live abroad so far away together.
I think the same true for you, but I'd never lived with a partner. I'd never lived with a girlfriend. Like, I'd never worked with a girlfriend either. So I knew, living together in China would be huge. That was already, like, the last thing we wanted is to, imagine taking that huge risk and then just getting sick of the sight of each other, because you're forced to work and commute and, breathe the same air every second of the day.
Yeah.
My fear of going to China was something, because I've talked about doing TEFL for a long time to my mum. It's something that I wanted to do, because when I left uni, I wanted to just stay in the city I was in, that was Liverpool. And so I took the first sort of decent office job I could, and just so I could sort of stay there, carry on my life, get wrecked at the weekends, and just do what I wanted to do. But after a while, I wanted a massive change, and that's why I went to Spain, because most of the TEFL jobs are in Asia, they are in China, and it took me a long time to find the one in Spain. And that was my mum's influence, putting the fear of God into me about the risks of going to Asia with peanut allergy and stuff like that. So that was my major barrier to overcome. But once I made the decision to go, I took the, it's like, fuck you, mum, made my own decision. That just, it empowered me, and I didn't care about I didn't have that fear until much later on in the year, after living there for a while. But once I'd made the decision to go, I was just excited. And obviously I hadn't seen Rosie for about 2.5 months when I did arrive.
Neither of us had a passion for China or anything. It was just that it happened, we could do it. So, yeah, it was really exciting.
I had all these things armed to tell my mum, expecting a blow-up, because she's quite volatile, my mum, sometimes, and I was expecting this big, argument, but she was like, I knew you would. So then immediately it was like, weight off the shoulders, this is what I'm doing, it's my decision.
That's when I allowed myself to believe that Ed was actually going to come, was after he told his mum.
Just the big bus that I had to go through to make it. But I wouldn't have done it, because I had, my mum's fears intercepting it, and it took Rosie for,
for your life to begin.
For my life to begin, and for me to stop listening to my mum. I was gonna stop myself from saying that, but it's coming out now. So love conquers all, doesn't it? Arriving in Guangzhou after 2.5 months not seeing Rosie, and she's the first person to see, it's amazing. I had no fear. I had nothing else. It it was just excitement at that point, because like I said, the decision was mine and I'd taken ownership of it.
This is something that I've never actually told Dad before, but I was really worried about it because he was going like for me. You can't deny that. And,
I was whipped, yeah.
And in previous relationships, I had a habit of thinking that I was in love with someone and then 2 weeks later being like, no, I was wrong. So that was a genuine fear of mine that, you know, that would be the worst thing ever. That would be like literally the worst thing I've ever done in my life. And luckily, you know, the moment Ed arrived, any doubt left my mind. I literally never told him that.
I was going to say, the taxi ride from the airport to the hotel, because we'd not seen each other 2.5 months, and it was an intense, moment. It's a meeting, so I think I felt the pressure for it to be all romantic and but I'd just been on like a 13-hour flight, and I was, obviously very tired, and I think I didn't have much to say, and I think I was there was some silence in the taxi.
Oh, I didn't remember that at all.
No, because of course, like I said, I've just done a long haul flight. We're just in the taxi looking at boring motorways. But as soon as we were back at the hotel, and
I have no.
So that was no, I'd not brought it up because it was like I say, like an hour. That was the only fleeting moment I had of but it lasted as long as the taxi ride.
We were just so happy to be together because it had
just
been
carried on from where it left off.
Yeah, it had been 10 weeks apart, and I'd actually drawn calendars for us both to cross off every day. We've been literally crossing off the days, until we saw each other. So then once we were actually together, it was just amazing. Being with Ed, I just never ever felt homesick. I know as soon as Ed moved there, I felt at home.
China itself is challenging, but there are some days where you do feel massively rewarded by conquering like a Chinese obstacle, and by that I mean like maybe you've got to go do some bureaucracy, like go to the tax office and fill out these forms, because they're not the most helpful people who work in those sort of government bureaucrat roles, and it's frustrating and it's difficult, but with your limited amount of Chinese and understanding the script and you those little accomplishments occasionally they can be a treat.
I think the main thing that I learned from China was it was more about like the UK. I think I learned about how much your history, the history of the country that you live in, affects like the present. Obviously it's had a terrible 20th century China, and with everything that Mao did, like the Cultural Revolution and the idea of manners being bourgeoisie, and also eradicating artists and stuff, I think that has left such a sour taste. But yeah, basically it just taught me how much I value my own country and our cultural values. I think we always knew that we weren't going to stay. I remember saying to my mum before I left that there was no way that I was going to do 2 years there, and I hadn't even arrived there yet. For me, I'm too much of a home bird. If you live in China, you're only going to see your parents, for example, maybe once or twice maximum in a year, and I just couldn't live like that. So I needed to go back to Europe, basically.
The last half of the year we were looking for new jobs in West, in Europe, and that's how we did end up going to Sicily immediately after China. My peanut allergy and my asthma were the things that my mum kind of lorded over me to persuade me not to go, and I like I said, I had that I'm going anyway. I got ill. They gave me an inhaler, But then after that, I kind of just felt I couldn't breathe the whole time. Do you know what I mean? And it actually became a source of hypochondria for me, where I was like hyperventilating, thinking that I couldn't breathe because I was just so. When you think about air pollution, it's terrifying. It's the air that you breathe. It's all around you. There's no escaping it. And you think about the particles in it, and it really gave me a lot of anxiety that I'm actually still recovering from. I'm in CBT therapy right now for health anxiety, which I never had before I went to China. Like my mental health was like paying the cost at that point, so I left home. I left to go home. We've not even mentioned Jasmine at all yet, have we?
Obviously, we were not planning on having a baby until like mid-30s or something. And
we hadn't decided that. We didn't talk about it. It was so far out of our
So, but we had decided that we both liked the name Jasmine. So we discovered that I was pregnant in February of the following year. It was on the precipice of us parting ways for Christmas, basically.
Obviously, the conception date means that she was made in China. Made in China, grown in Sicily, and then birthed in England.
Born.
Oh yeah, of course it is. We're a different couple.
I think we both grew up a lot because the job was the kind of thing that you don't want to do it hungover because you're in a small room.
But we did all the time.
Not as much as our
did.
previous jobs. Not as much as our previous jobs.
I definitely did.
And being so far away from parents, like you have to just grow up. And I think China made me grow up a lot.
Like I said, I'm still kind of recovering from the anxiety that China gave me in those later months. It was the biggest year of my life.
If we hadn't been in China, we wouldn't have Jasmine.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Visitors. Now, the next episode will be quite a bit different. It's a conversation with singer-songwriter and musician Phil Madeley, and that will be revealing itself wherever you get your podcasts next week. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, all that good stuff. If you didn't, I'd prefer private hate mail, if possible. Until next time, bye-bye.